So welcome everyone to the very first of the Institute for Women's Health International Women's Day events for 2023. We are running 4 events over 2 days, and this is one of the online meetings. So welcome everybody. And we are also going to be recording this. So we will put this video on YouTube, and we'll also share it on social media. So if you want to keep anything anonymous, anything in the chat, or when you ask some questions in the Q&A, if you want them anonymous, then please just turn off your name and put anonymous, and that will be fine. So we've got 2 great chairs today, and we've got an excellent panel who are going to tell us what they think about social media portraying women's health. And we're going to cover lots of different topics, but from infertility to the menopause. So I'd like to just briefly start by introducing our 2 chairs today. I'm trying to pronounce this right. Okorite is currently completing her MSc in Women's Health at the Institute for Women's Health, and is working part-time creating content for teens with Luna, a team health and wellbeing app. And Biba is currently doing a part-time master's in reproductive science and women's health, also at the Institute for Women's Health. And she works part-time with the EVA Appeal, the UK's leading gynecological cancer charity, as their communications assistant. So welcome everybody. And I'm now going to be quiet and I'll hand over to our chairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Joyce, for handing over. So I'm just going to briefly introduce what we're talking about today, and then I'll pass on to Okorite, who will introduce our first guest, and we'll just get started. So with the explosion of social media, it's important to see how this is portraying women's health. And social media has the opportunity to educate women, support them through their key life stages. But is this really happening? In this event, we're going to be looking at how social media portrays infertility, fertility treatment, the menopause, and women's satisfaction in their bodies. So yeah, that's what we'll be covering today. I'm just going to pass on to Okorite now.
Thank you, Biba. So first we have Claire, who is going to be joining us to be speaking today. So Claire is a content editor of IVF Babble, a leading online fertility resource since its launch in 2016. Claire is a journalist of 25 years, and she has written hundreds of articles on all aspects of fertility. She's had her own difficult journey to motherhood, as she was diagnosed with endometriosis, and after successful surgery, she finally welcomed her daughter in 2019, 6 years later. She sees her role at IVF Babble as an opportunity to engage and educate anyone who might be on a fertility journey. Claire believes that fertility education from an early age is the key to helping women and men understand their reproductive lifespan, and social media can play a pivotal role in that. So we have Claire with us.
Thank you, Okorite. Just want to say firstly, thanks to Professor Harper and the chairs for inviting me to take part in this and today's webinar. It's a real pleasure to be here to represent women and also IVF Babble. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to start off by talking about what IVF Babble does and wants to create, and what we have been doing since its launch. And then I was going to sort of talk about my own journey within my role in IVF Babble. So I'll try and keep it to the 10 minutes. Obviously, yeah, stop me if I go over. I'm absolutely fine with that. So just to start with, IVF Babble, we like to think, is a leading fertility online resource that was created by good friends Tracy Bamborough and Sarah Marshall-Page back in 2016. Tracy and Sarah both have had quite a turbulent journey to motherhood themselves, but are now, thankfully, mothers of twin girls each. When they were going through their journeys, they felt quite alone, quite isolated. They didn't feel there was that much support network out there for them. So that's one of the reasons they wanted to create a community in which people found themselves in similar situations, could engage and support each other in a safe place, which is why IVF Babble was launched. The website, which began in 2016, has literally thousands of articles covering all aspects of fertility treatment, conditions, expert opinions, expert articles, news studies, changes in fertility policy, real life and celebrity stories. it's the main aim, our main aim is to try to remove, and it sounds like a cliche, but tries to remove the taboos and the stigmas that surround fertility. What we want to do is we want to educate anyone on a fertility journey, and we use social media as a platform to fully engage in a two-way conversation with, we've got about 30,000 followers on Instagram and quite a similar number on Facebook. But what we also offer is, via social media, access to experts. So we ask experts to come onto the platform for a live Insta Q&A, and our followers are able to have instant access, direct access with experts who they can ask questions on. We usually have a topic, but usually it can be on absolutely anything. And if they can't answer it then we're able to DM them at a later point. We also host regular polls on different current affairs when it comes to fertility, campaigning, lobbying for changes, lobbying the government for changes in the industry, and also in the workplace. So that's a bit about what IVF Babble is all about. For when it's me personally, my fertility journey, when it began, social media really was relatively new. It was there, and I was using it in my journalistic career, but it wasn't something that I immediately thought I could go to find information or find support. I mean, when I first started using social media, things like Friends Reunited was around. So I'm sort of giving away my age a little bit here, but you know, I didn't imagine it would explode into what it is today, which is essentially the most popular way to communicate with each other and society at large. Okay, so last night when I was doing a little bit of research for this, I thought I'm going to go onto Instagram and just see how many posts. If I put in a search term, what would it come up? So I put hashtag infertility, and it turned out there was over 2 million posts. Obviously didn't have time to read them all, but what I came across was just hundreds and hundreds of posts, memes, inspirational quotes, news stories, videos. I mean, these fantastic videos of an embryo making its way to the uterus. I mean, it was just, you know, really incredible. So it, to me, immediately came to mind that, you know, many people want to share their stories, they want to share their hope. And, you know, I believe it's now 1 in 8 couples across the globe who are having trouble having a family. So, you know, I feel it's really, really important that social media is a part of that. I can only come at this from really a patient viewpoint, and from what I discovered on my personal journey. I got married, but after 2 years, we discovered I couldn't conceive naturally. We've been trying for an amount of time, and I knew people who were going through fertility treatment, including a close relative, but there was still a huge amount of shame associated with being infertile. Something IVF Babble, we're working to change, but we can't do it alone, obviously. So bringing up the subject of my issues face to face with someone was really tough, and I found I was very isolated and quite lonely. But I'm a born problem solver. If I could have solved my own problem, I would. But I knew I couldn't sit around and wait for the answers to come to me. So I scoured the web looking for information to help me understand my condition, which was endometriosis. But at the same time, sort of running by the side of this, was I left the employment I was in. And just weeks later, through a friend of a friend, I was put in touch with Tracy and Sarah. And, you know, as luck would have it, we began working together. I had a phone call with them. And even though I'd never met them before, never, you know, discussed anything, you know, of a personal issue, we all had a similar story. And so therefore, that's how we came together. With basically our sole aim is to provide information, correct information, fact-based information that had been deeply lacking for them and for me, and in terms of the support. Okay, so in the 6 years I've been working with IVF Babble, I've discovered that there are many positives about social media. The main thing being able to actively engage and have a sense of a belonging when you really don't feel like you fit in anywhere. Before social media, had someone said they had infertility issues, they may be referred by their GP to go to a group in a village hall, or, you know, a town hall somewhere miles from home. That's if you were brave enough to actually turn up. So on social media, you have this instant access and connection to others who are on the same road as you. Yeah, you don't know them, you don't know anything much about them, but you'll probably never meet them, but you have this, you share something. And just knowing that there is someone else out there can do wonders for, well, it did wonders for my self-esteem and my confidence. So through social media, we've been able to organise at IVF Babble many fertility events, fertility lunches, where clinicians and fertility experts are able to just meet, mingle and have lunch with our followers who are our patients. These events are organised entirely via social media, and they've proved really successful. Sarah, who is one of the co-directors, she runs the Instagram page, and she works tirelessly day and night. She gets hundreds and hundreds of DMs a day from people desperate to find out how they can be helped, who they need to talk to. And what she does is she will try and answer all if she can. She really does run herself ragged, but she tries because she's so desperate to be able to help people and signpost them to experts that can give the right information and advice. And that's one of our key things, is being able to give the correct scientifically based information from experts in the industry. Many women have been told that to freeze their eggs can guarantee, and I hate using this, but guarantee a family later in life. Well, we know all too well, there are no guarantees when it comes to fertility treatment. We need to use social media to debunk the myths, educate and give women informed choice when they start thinking about their fertility. We need to use social media to actively educate young people about their reproductive lifespan and the key ages they need to be aware of. We often discuss different treatment options with our followers who are currently patients with clinics, just because we feel if someone asks a question, oh, okay, have you been offered this treatment, or someone might have been offered a particular treatment, and they come to us and say, well, has anybody else had this? And our followers are able to engage with each other, which we feel is, is vital. That's promoting that community. But where there are lots of positives, there are also some negatives. Now, we write real life stories. I write several a week. We interview people about their stories, and they can offer hope and support to somebody else. We also cover celebrity stories, which can give hope, but often they cause confusion and false hope, especially for those celebrities who choose not to share their story. Many celebrities are open about their journey on social media, and that can be really refreshing and encouraged. But many do not, and this can lead to women believing that they can have a child at whatever age they choose, that they can wait. But we believe this is a false narrative. We can combat this by using social media to educate women early in life on the key stages of their reproductive life. I had no idea when I began trying for a baby at 34 that my fertility was about to fall off a cliff. I had no one told me. I had no one to educate me when I was at school, other than trying to persuade me it wasn't a good idea to get pregnant. That's, family planning. We also like to think that all clinics across the globe are there for the good of patients, and many are. We're not saying they're not. But to offer the most effective treatments at a fair price using fact-based information and evidence-based treatments. But sadly, sometimes this is not always the case. We have encountered posts in which clinics, thankfully none in the UK, offering women in their 40s the chance to freeze their eggs and the opportunity still to achieve pregnancy. We also know that social egg freezing does not guarantee you a baby, and as long as the likely outcomes are outlined, then they are maybe acting in a responsible way. The pregnancy announcements can be tough, as can baby shower videos, and the trolling I think we've maybe all experienced. But we can't stop the conversation because of ignorance. I'm just about to finish up. I promise I'm just about to. You're coming back on. What we want to do is still have that uncomfortable conversation via social media and face the prejudice of ignorance. But overall, just coming to sum up, how is infertility portrayed on social media? We feel the positives outweigh the negative, and the ugly side can be ignored. Social media does get a bad rap at times, but when it comes to infertility, I believe there is a community of millions all on the same path, walking it together in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was incredible. It's so interesting to hear the huge effect that IVF Babble has had on this area. It's amazing. So thank you very, very much. Yeah, there is a Q&A at the end of the session. We're going to each of the speakers for 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll get them at the end and have a discussion. So thank you, Claire. Next, we're going to Annice. Annice is known as the hormone doctor and is one of the Financial Times Women of 2022. Annice is a leading UK hormone specialist, speaker and author with 3 decades of experience in hospital medicine. Her specialism in hormones from the early days has focused on optimizing quality of life in relation to hormone problems. Annice is an international profile in the field of menopause, and she's the author of The Complete Guide to the Menopause. So we're very glad to have her, and without further ado, we'll pass her on.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And thank you for the invitation to speak. It's really good to speak, and I think it's a very, very important topic, and all the subjects being covered are important. And obviously my bias towards menopause is certainly, I feel that it's an important topic to cover here. So I've been asked to talk a bit about myself a little bit more. So my background is that, yeah, I graduated graduated 31 years ago, actually. So I've been working in hospital medicine since then. I've trained through several medical specialties, and I've got a really broad understanding of the human body in men and women. In adults, I haven't studied pediatrics, but from puberty onwards, I've got a very deep breadth of understanding of hormones. And I've had a specific interest in menopause probably for more than 25 years. I was trying to work out when I realized that menopause was important, and it was long before it was relevant to me, if you know what I mean. I worked, one of my very first posts in medicine was actually in a cancer hospital on a breast cancer treatment ward, an oncology ward, and many of the women going through breast cancer treatment who survived, and at that time few women survived, now thankfully many women survived, if they survived, they'd suffered menopause related consequences of treatment very frequently. And I went on to move regions, went elsewhere, studied other aspects of endocrinology, and then returned to the same cancer hospital to study what we call late effects, which is the late endocrine effects of cancer treatment. So I started that job in 2000, and since then I've pretty much been doing a lot of work in menopause, all aspects. And so when it comes to social media, very few people like me are actually in the social media space. I would say, and I'm not being mean to my colleagues, I think I say it to their faces, we tend to be in ivory towers. We do our clinics, we see our patients in clinics and in multidisciplinary, teams and, on the wards, and we're not very present on social media. And I only found this out when I went on to social media. And what I realized in terms of women's health across the board, and in particular menopause, is that there is a huge disconnect in what women are seeing on social media and what experts understand about women's health. It's just a huge, huge disconnect. And so I realized I should be in the social media space, because I felt that what I had was breadth of understanding and experience to balance the conversation. What do I mean by that? So let's talk about what social media can do. And we've just heard from sort of the IVF Babble perspective, how powerful social media can be, what a force for good it can be. And we need it because everybody is now on social media. If they weren't before the pandemic, they certainly are now. Everybody is on social media. And in terms of menopause, I'll tell you how things really changed. I mean, I've been managing menopause for a long time, but the big sea change in menopause care, certainly in the UK and around the world, came around 2015. We had the NICE guidelines on menopause first published, and it was that publication advising about clinical care of women going through menopause changed all the recommendations, in that treatments that were thought to be very unsafe a few years before were thought to be safe. So women for many years had not had any access to hormone therapies for menopause. My patients had, in my ivory tower, in my specialist clinics, but many women who were being managed by their GPs who were suffering with menopause symptoms were just not being offered any treatment because there were some concerns about the treatments available, namely hormone replacement therapy. And that changed as some of the research results were sort of questioned, myths were debunked, more data was found. And actually, for many women, hormone replacement therapy can be given very safely. But no one was getting it up until about 2015, or at least they weren't unless they were seeing specialists. So suddenly there was a change, and there started to be some media reports about menopause in the news, and women were sort of saying, well, I've had symptoms, could I try treatment? And many women were then able to access treatment, which is really good. And that's all fine. And then the rise of social media came in. And when did it start? When did this sudden rise in social media health begin? It's insidious, isn't it? And I think Twitter's been around since about 2008 or maybe before that, but certainly Instagram and Facebook have really risen insidiously over the last decade or so. And during the pandemic, I think many people were working from home or furloughed or around generally, and able to use social media more and not able to do much else. And so I think there was a huge increase in the use of social media from early 2020 onwards. And I was already on social media at that time, and what I saw was a very big rise in lots of people talking about menopause. Now, let's look at the theory. Social media can amplify information. What we've had with menopause forever, is that it's shrouded in secrecy. No one talks about it. A little bit about infertility that we've heard about in the previous talk. No one talks about it. It's hidden. The problems that some women experience are hidden. And actually breaking the taboo and talking about menopause can be really, really empowering for many women, and it can help them find solutions. So the theory is that social media can amplify the dissemination of information about menopause, allow women to understand what their choices are, make them empowered. And that's certainly what I'm all about. I'm all about empowering women. And that's good. And we've got lots of celebrities in the sort of menopause health influencers sector who are really trying to raise awareness about menopause. And I know that they all mean very well and they want to help women. But many of those celebrities aren't always linked directly with experts. And so they will be giving their own stories, their own anecdotes, and anecdotes can be empowering, but they can also sometimes be confusing. One thing I always say about menopause is that it's incredibly diverse. Every single woman's experience is completely different. So the problem with social media and menopause is if you get one celebrity sharing a story, or you get 30 or 40 celebrities sharing that same story, women want to be like those celebrities. It's like with anything, with influencers, you kind of aspire to being like people who you hear about. So if that celebrity is on a particular treatment, everybody wants that treatment. If that celebrity says, I'm doing this, people will follow. And that, again, it can be really good. But what's happened in the menopause field with social media is we've had dissemination of information. We've had a massive exponential rise since 2020 in awareness about menopause. We've had an increase in awareness that HRT is much safer than it was thought to be. And we are having the taboo breaking down. However, the other thing about social media is misinformation and disinformation. And I see, as an expert, mistakes being made with the information that's being relayed all of the time. And that is essentially meaning that many women will see information that isn't suitable for them because it's not applying to them. And that can make them have fear of missing out because they want to be, like everyone else who's gaining benefits from a particular treatment. And I think I'm probably confusing you with what I'm saying here. And believe me, women are being really confused because you think, should I be on testosterone? Should I be on estrogen? Should I be on progesterone? How much? What type? What does body identical mean? And there's lots of information being disseminated, but it's not all factual. There's misrepresentation. So the reality of social media with menopause at the moment is it's creating a lot of confusion. And if you like a particular brand, product or service, or a particular influencer, you will see more of that type of information. So this is all to do with social media influence algorithms. So you then, if you like something that's not correct information, you'll get more of that. And that again can be really, really problematic. I saw somebody who was this morning in my clinic who said that they kept seeing something about a new treatment for long COVID. You know, it wasn't to do with menopause, but it was to do with long COVID on social media. And the problem is, if you click on something once, you'll keep getting posts that are similar to that. That's how social media works. So at the moment, we are still in a learning curve of how to make social media be a force for good in terms of the menopause sector. We've got misinformation, which is accidental. We've also got disinformation, which is deliberate from the massive rise in the commercial menopause sector, where people are making money privately out of menopause care. And, you know, it is difficult. Menopause is
Annice, are you still with us? I think her screen locked.
It did. Let's see if she comes back in a sec.
To be honest, I'm here again, and I think that was my cue to end. I confused everybody, but that's it. That's where we are. If you want a summary, menopause, social media, confusion, and that's where we are. I'm sorry about my computer locking out, but that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Annice. I think you really highlighted there some of the pros and cons about using social media, especially in healthcare. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So now we have Dr. Fabio Fasoli, who is a lecturer in social psychology at the University of Surrey. His research focuses on how communication, voice and language affects self-perception and interpersonal and intergroup relations. In the last years, he has focused on the role of social media and both their positive and negative impact on women and men's well-being. In 2020, he was awarded a British Academy Leverhulme Small Grant to understand the role of humour on women's body image. He's going to talk about the effects of body positive and humorous parody imagery on women's body satisfaction. So over to you, Fabio. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and to hear the work that Claire and Annice has done. I mean, it's amazing. I haven't done as much as you, so be prepared. Today, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about the research I've been conducting on social media. And I'm going to focus on women, but I actually have done work on men as well. And so the reason why we focus on women is because social media like Instagram or TikTok are very widely used, it has been said. And those are media that are, we call it photo-based or appearance-based because the visual component is in there. So it means that we're constantly exposed to images or short videos. So there is evidence out there that women who are frequently using those type of social media do report body image concerns. But there might be many different explanations of why this is the case. One of those explanations is the fact that they are constantly exposed to the idealized body image. So, all those pictures of models who are portrayed as being very thin and fit, and those are images that are heavily photo edited. You don't see any skin imperfection. The body is shaped in a way that it looks very unrealistic. And the reason why women do report negative body image after seeing those images is because they compare themselves with those ideals that are very unrealistic and unattainable. So this is the negative side, I guess, of social media and the kind of images we can find there. But social media can be useful. I always talk about social media as a tool to change things. And this has been highlighted in the talks before. And body positivity is the example, the best example we have seen. It really helped raising awareness about the fact that bodies are very diverse. So body positivity aims to challenge those body ideals that are unrealistic and actually showcase that each body is beautiful, that we are very diverse and in shapes, forms, and anything. So, there is been a growing body of research on body positivity. As soon as it became a phenomenon worth investigating, everyone jumped on it and started doing research showing that indeed women exposed to body positive images, they are feeling better about themselves, they are in a more positive mood, and they feel more satisfied with their bodies. However, there is also, with body positivity and the positive and the benefits of it, also came some criticism. And one of these was about the fact that body positive images are often portray women in a sexualized way. So you have that component of like being, the woman posing in a sexy way, touching the hair and those kind of things. And from previous literature, we know that sexualization is problematic. So we have recently published a paper trying to understand whether exposure to images of body positivity that does involve or do not involve sexualization can play, can trigger different effects. And we actually find that it doesn't matter. Simply being exposed to body positive images is beneficial for women. So regardless of whether you see a woman who is like, scantily dressed and posing sexy, whereas like another woman that presents herself with clouser clothes and, posing naturally, whatever, as long as it does represent the diversity of our body, that seems to be beneficial. And I guess it's a positive news, especially because we want people and women to portray themselves in the best way they want. So if they want to pose sexy, they should do it, and that's completely fine. But the other thing I got interested in and I started working on is humor. So humor has not really been studied much in relation to body image. I've done research showing that women who endorse in positive humor, they actually feel better about themselves. They use humor as a coping strategy to, maybe deal with some body image concerns. But a few years ago, I think it was 2018, there was a very famous Australian comedian called Celeste Barber. Some of you might know her, who started posting pictures that we call the humor parodies. So those are posts in which you have basically two pictures. On the one hand, you have the picture of the model that represent the body ideal. They're kind of like bizarre pictures because you see those models like posing in very crazy way that they're not really, the way people pose usually. And then you have her, who represent, a woman with her body. She talks about the fact that her body does not fit with those body ideals, but she's very happy and comfortable with her body. She's very appreciative of her body. But what she does, she basically makes fun of these pictures that represent the ideals. And what is interesting is that in one of the interviews she gave, she talks about the fact that she wants to make people laugh. She's not laughing at the model itself, the model is doing her job, so she's doing what she's asked to do. She's laughing and making fun of the system that portray women in this way. And there is no room there, like that's kind of like constant representation we get. So taking this in consideration, we started looking at the positive effects of being exposed to those humor parodies. And in one of the studies, we asked our participants, who were all young women, to basically spontaneously tell us what they think and how they feel when they see those images. And of course, they recognize the humor, so they start smiling, they laugh, and they see this is funny. But they immediately realize this is not just about something being funny. It's about comparing what is realistic and what is not realistic. So they talk about the fact that this kind of like funny way to talk about body image reveal the truth. That's how they mention in their interview. So they mention this is not realistic, it is. And also they talk about this sense of relief. So after seeing that they feel positive about themselves, they relate to Celeste as like, oh, this is the one we should follow. We shouldn't really follow the influencer or the model that posts all edited pictures and so on. So it's clear that those two types of images that are out there in social media are important. But are they having similar effects? Are they both positive? Is it one better than the other? Well, this is a question we have asked ourselves, and we have done now few studies on this. And what it turns out is that, yes, they're both beneficial. It's not that one is working better than the other. Both body positive and humor parodies are having positive effects on women, so they feel more satisfied about their body after they are exposed to those images. The process on how they get to this point of feeling better about themselves is slightly different. What body positive and humor parody images have in common is that they are perceived as a critique and as challenging those body ideals that are very unrealistic. And this is key because we also found that being exposed to those pictures reduce concern about weight, but that's only when the women start engaging in this process of realizing, okay, this is a critique. It's not just, you know, a picture of a woman or something funny. Those pictures are conveying a message, and they're very powerful in doing that. So when women who saw this picture engage in this kind of processing, then they feel better about themselves, and they feel less concerned about appearing or trying to reach those ideal goals that we know are basically impossible to achieve. So yeah, that's basically what we have been doing. And so my point is, social media has been shown to have negative effects when it comes to body image concerns, but actually they can be used strategically to promote a more diverse way. And you can do that through body positivity, that's great, but you can use humor as well. That's another strategy that we can use. And, you know, it might work for different people. So some people might be more comfortable in seeing body positive images, and other people might actually be more comfortable in seeing something that is funny and humor. And yes, so I think that's my take-home message. I've been very quick, I think.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're running a bit ahead of your minute. You've still got a minute left, but I think, you know, I think it's super interesting, the body positive movement at the moment, and especially in the last 5 years, you can really see the difference on social media of how these influencers are rising to the top, and just what that means in terms of in our AI society where we're going. It's good to have these positive influencers looking at humor and ways to kind of counteract this. So really interesting. Thank you. So that's our speakers all been introduced to you all. They've all had their allotted times, and now we're going to be doing our Q&A and discussion. So any questions you have, we'll put them in the chat. And I think the first question we have to kick off is for Annice, which is, are you on social media, and what type of posts can you offer to reduce the confusion women feel surrounding perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. So yes, I am on social media, even though there have been a lot of times when I've thought, maybe I don't really want to be here. I don't need to be on social media in terms of anything really, but I need to be on it to balance the conversation. That's how I see it. So, you know, a lot of the people who are on social media posting about menopause are on social media because they, you know, are trying to get people to go to their clinics or buy their products, brands and services. So it's quite a difficult thing to do because, you know, I don't have a brand ambassador. I'm not trying to sort of get people in. I'm not spending money trying to, you know, optimize my, you know, presence there. So it's not easy. And I'm also doing it in my spare time, which is not easy. But yes, I am on social media. I've stayed there since I went on, probably in 2019 was the first time I really went on. I'm mainly on Instagram. And the reason I'm mainly on Instagram is because that's the place that none of my colleagues are on. Well, few of my colleagues are on. I think there are some of us who are there, Professor Harper included, but few are on. Many of my colleagues are on Twitter, and Twitter actually, you know, I think Twitter's quite aggressive. Not many women who are searching information about menopause are on Twitter. Mostly they're on Instagram. So I'm very present on Instagram. I don't post much on Twitter. I think how I can help women with balancing the conversation is providing a consistent message and repeating factual information about, you know, anything to do with women's health and menopause. Because I'm on Instagram, I see what all the common influencers are posting about. And when I see things that are being misinterpreted, misrepresented, or even, you know, accidentally or even deliberately, I will try to do a post that is balancing. So I'll give you an example. I posted this morning on Instagram. Professor Harper knows because she's seen the post, but there's been a real media storm about the use of testosterone during menopause, and there's been information which is incorrect, saying everyone should be on testosterone forever, just like they're on HRT. It's the third form of HRT, and it's simply disinformation. There are no high quality data suggesting this. There aren't even high quality observational studies that suggest this. There are people who kind of twist some of the results and say, oh, well, actually, you know, testosterone is really important. There's a lot of heavy use of anecdotal reports. So, and the problem is, and I said it in my talk, menopause is extremely diverse. There are no two women who are the same. And so we have to stick to the facts, but we also have to look at the individual. And that requires clinical skills, clinical acumen, good clinical practice. And I think that's where it goes wrong on social media. So I simply post consistent messages. And when I see incorrect information, I try and provide a balanced post that provides facts. I don't like to point fingers because I don't think that's very helpful. I think people get upset. I try not to be inflammatory. And I try to, in my post, provide explanations as to why information is being misinterpreted. So, you know, this morning I was talking about testosterone and the fact that observational descriptions, anecdotes can be significantly subjected to placebo effects. And that can make people think that there's an amazing response and then it stops working. And why does it stop working? Because I'm not on high enough dose, and you go down a route that isn't correct. So I won't go on. I can get, as Professor Harper knows, I can go on for hours talking about these things, but consistent messages, repeating facts is what I do.
Thank you so much, Annice, for that. The next question again is for you, but I think it's one that I feel like if the other panelists also want to answer afterwards, feel free to do so. So the question is, what are your views on these providers being regulated in some way, even if it's some sort of disclaimer?
I think, you know, obviously my view would be I'd much prefer that, but I can't see how it can logistically happen. Maybe it can. I'm not a social media expert, but it's a little bit like, I would say, here's an example. In the 1950s, cigarette smoking, for example, I mean, it's a really bad example actually, but I'll explain why I'm using it as an example. Cigarette smoking was popular amongst the public, and it was heavily advertised by the cigarette manufacturers. And so, you know, everybody started smoking, and many people smoked. And then it took quite a long time for research evidence to prove that cigarette smoking was actually harmful to the health. It took a long time to prove that. And in the early days, the research studies all, you know, were challenged by the big cigarette manufacturers who didn't want the evidence to be shown that smoking was harmful. And so roll on decades, then the cigarette companies had to put warnings on all of their, you know, cigarette packets to say smoking can cause cancer and heart disease and is damaging to fetal growth, etc. So now that's there, and there's some degree of regulation, but that took probably 40 to 50 years to materialize. And so if I talk about the monetized menopause industry, the whole you know, commercializing of menopause, people are being given adverts on their social media feeds, on the TV ads now. I see it everywhere, many different products being advertised. It's all unregulated. So yes, I would like to see it regulated, but realistically, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
I'm just going to steer that interesting point and kind of open it up for further discussion, as I don't think there's any chat questions. I think that with COVID and the disclaimer that comes up on all social media about the COVID and the vaccine, I thought that's been a really interesting change of kind of the health point of view on social media, because you know, it can be regulated in that sort of way, or at least information can come up and say that it's wrong or right. Do you think, to any of the panelists, do you think that there's scope for, I don't know, the word of mentioning fertility and a link comes up, which is, this is talking about a sensitive subject, or do you think that that's a slippery slope? That's my question to the panel.
I'm sorry, just unmuting myself there. I agree with Annice in terms of regulation. It would be incredibly difficult to regulate. If you think about the hundreds of millions of posts that happen, you know, every day on social media. And what I would like to say is, it's when you think about social media, how did any of you start using social media? Did you just set up an account and start using it? Is that what most of us would do, I would imagine? There is no, again, education on how to use social media. So when, you know, for example, my mum, bless her, she's 72, she's on Instagram and Facebook. She has absolutely no idea how to use social media. She likes things she shouldn't. She's friends with things. I mean, she gets messages from people all the time. She doesn't have any idea. So in terms of being able to educate someone on how to recognize that the post might be promoting a product or is linked to some sort of ad, or there is none of that. So when someone goes on to a social media post by an influencer or someone who's got some sort of commercial gain to make, they're not looking for, looking at hashtag ad or looking at hashtag partner links or anything like that. So I'm not saying that it should, I mean, there's some responsibility obviously should go on to that particular person, definitely. And if there could be, like you suggest, some sort of disclaimer, a link to whether it's sensitive a subject, or, you know, that whether there are partnerships, we also need to educate ourselves on how to recognize when it's something that's authentic from someone who is an expert or a professor in that field, or somebody who is being essentially paid to promote that product.
Can I jump on this? Because I think you raise a really good point. So in terms of body image, I think it was 2020, there was an inquiry by the Women's and Equality Committee, and they're talking about potentially, you know, forcing some regulations and see. I think it's a bit more difficult, you know, in a situation where you might have information that is right or wrong, you know. But going back to Claire's point about like educating people and so on Instagram or other social media, there is research showing that people tend to follow people who portray themselves in a very idealized way. But so, you know, if you start like maybe unfollow some of those people and follow other people who might, you know, promote body positivity or humor, then you might be more exposed to kind of like different way of like images that are out there. Of course, then the brands and everything, they might try to, you know, not only have like thin and fit models, but have a diversity of models in different body shape. But I think it goes both ways, as Claire has said. Like, it's important like that we also take, you know, ownership of what we follow and what we don't follow, and that can actually make us feeling better.
Can I just if anyone else wants to speak, they can, but I was just going to respond to that as well. So when I was speaking earlier, and then I got cut out, what I was going to say was, you know, talking about these inspirational, you know, people who are influencers on social media. They're really good at social media, they look good, etc., etc. They influence people. That's why they're called influencers. And they're much better at it than professors, I'm afraid, or academics. So when you say, you know, people should just stop following all the influencers and follow the academics, well, we're not as much fun to follow. We're very balanced. There's no big, exciting, dramatic things going on. We don't post beautiful pictures of ourselves, etc. And, you know, Davina McCall is really trying to break the taboo in the menopause space. Most of people who will be watching will have heard of her, but she posted stuff about, she you know, did a TV program and posted, you know, about her HRT journey. And that's why in the last 12 months or longer, we've had shortages. No one can get HRT because there has been an exponential rise in use. And that's because everybody wants to be like Davina McCall. And, you know, it's not her fault in a way. She's an influencer. But when you put influencing into health, it becomes complicated because, you know, this exponential rise in HRT, some of the women who are wanting it probably won't do very well on it, but they want to be like Davina. Some women will do very well on it. Some women can't have it and have a terrible fear of missing out. So it is really problematic having, you know, health and social media linked, because people don't want to be like the professor or the academic. They want to be or follow them. They want to follow that person who they like watching their life. You know, like somebody who I know personally, who is an influencer with 1 million followers, who does fitness. And she posted a picture of herself and said, oh, I've got my favorite perfume on. I've not told anyone about this, but I just love it. And she said the name, and it was completely sold out everywhere within 24 hours. All of her followers went to get it because they're aspiring to that life, that product. So yeah, it's a problem with health, and I hope we find the solution soon, but I'll stop talking now.
Can I just come back at that and say, yeah, actually, I find it incredibly scary how much power these influencers have over, you know, the normal person on the street. Personally, I would rather have authenticity over what perfume someone is wearing, but that's just me. That, you know, I may be different to other people. I do follow Davina McCall, so I'm at an age where the perimenopause is creeping up on me. So yeah, I mean, I am interested in what she has to say. But again, I think it's about education. I think it's about just being able to have that, you know, and it's tricky. But being able, in my job as a journalist, I have to remain impartial. Something that's been, you know, burned in my brain since I started my career. So I always feel almost lucky that I'm able to have that impartiality, but you know, a lot of people don't. And that's, you know, like you say, there's a chap, I can't remember what his name is now, but it's nothing to do with health. Well, actually it is a little bit. It was to do with the drink is called Prime. It's a bit like Red Bull, but have you anyone heard of it? It's called this Prime drink. And he'd gone onto social media and said, have this drink. This drink's great. This drink's great. And it's kind of similar to Red Bull and the Monster drinks, I believe. And it's sold out all across the world. You can't get, I mean, a can is now 15 or 20 pounds. And you think, this is the power that people have over social media. And I find it, yeah, really quite scary. I just wanted to add that point.
Can I just add something? Going back to what Annice said about the influencers' lives and they want to aspire to them. So I was told that if you want to have more effect, us professors shouldn't just tell them the nitty gritty and what we want people to know. We have to get personal. So I do that, and I do put when I'm out clubbing or swimming with friends or whatever, and I do get lots of really positive responses from people come up to me. Oh, I love it when you do this. So I've ended up now, through being influenced of the whole social media thing, becoming almost, I was introduced actually at a talk the other day as a motivational speaker, which I never thought I was before, but I've sort of got sucked into that. Because I think Annice is totally right. I think if we're just a very dry professor just saying, this is what you should know about women's health, we're not going to get anywhere. We've got to get a bit personal. So, but it's hard. And you actually, a few of you said, whenever I give a talk at a conference, my last slide is my social media links. And I tell everyone, please, can more of you be involved in social media? Because Claire, the infertility field, it's great that it's full of people telling their stories, but there is a huge amount of misinformation. And as both of you said, because of that, we are debunking myths. I put this in the chat, we are having to spend significant amount of our time and energy debunking myths that come from people sharing their own stories, which get extrapolated and Chinese whispered and everything. So I wish we weren't having to do that. I wish we could have used that time, which all of you mentioned, which was education.
I think just to add on that last point, and then I think we're going to pass on for the last question that we have in the chat. In my personal experience of working at the EVA Peel, we serve the 5 gynecological cancers, and 2 of them are really rare and not spoken about, and one of them is vulval cancer. And I'm all for kind of more regulation on social media, but I think just as a kind of counterpoint, we put up a photo of a vulva, which is essential for our awareness. It's essential for our awareness. And Instagram flagged it down, and they put a cover over it to say it was sensitive. And that, I think, is what's really interesting and iconic, but special about women's health, is that while we're raising awareness for fertility and these social dynamics of menopause, there's anatomy things and there's vital health information that Instagram isn't pushing forward. So I know we can't discuss that further because we want to go on to the last question, but just as a counterpoint of when there is too much regulation, it means that people aren't getting the information they need. So yeah, I just wanted to add that point. I'll pass on to Okorite to ask the last question that we'll probably have time for, but if any more questions, put them in.
Thank you, Biba. I totally agree with you with that last point. There's so much censorship as well, which we do have to discuss whether some of the censorship is too much, especially regarding women's health and reproductive health. So that is a great point that hopefully in the future we all get to discuss. So the last question is in the chat, it's for you, Annice, again, and it's about PMDD. So the question mentions that there's still little done to talk about PMS and severe PMS, known as PMDD. So what about PMDD and social media? What are your thoughts on that, Annice?
Okay, well, I'm just going to answer a bit of something that was talked about before, quickly, before the end. Just to say about social media and influencers, and also often people who don't have credentials or qualifications giving advice. On my feed, I often get people saying that I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm providing balanced information because they've read an influencer who may have done a 2-day diploma on menopause or women's health. Literally, that's all that person's qualification, who's making money out of people. And people think I don't know what I'm talking about. So we've got a long way to go. Menopause is trending. The influencers are raising the profile of menopause, breaking the taboo. That's really good. That is not happening with some other women's health issues, and PMS and PMDD is a really, really important women's health issue. And actually the prevalence of problems I've seen increase over time, which may well be related to our environment, different aspects of our environment, which there's no time to go into. But I very much, on social media, I tend to focus on menopause, but I very much work with hormone issues throughout the adult lifespan, and PMS and PMDD are really important. There isn't a lot of awareness about it, but actually, because of that, it's usually very clear for me to signpost people to good websites, good social media feeds. So I will always signpost my patients or people who contact me through social media to an American website called IAPMD Global, which is brilliant. And it's affiliated with the American governing bodies, and it's a patient or linked organization that has factual information about what evidence we have. And then in the UK, we have NAPS PMS, NAPS PMS, which has a website, and they've both got websites and Instagram feeds. And I think they've got other social media feeds as well. So there is information out there. But again, if it's not something that's being talked about and trending, then people don't necessarily find it. But actually, that is very factual information that is available. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much. We've got 2 minutes left, so I don't know if anyone else wants to put their hand up or raise a point, because I think we're barely scratching the surface with how many things there are to talk about. So if not, I'd just like to thank all of our wonderful panelists. You all brought a very different, unique understanding and viewpoint from where you're coming from. So we really appreciate it. And thanks to Joyce for organising it. And thanks for everyone for coming. I think there'll probably have to be more discussions afterwards about social media. And if you miss any of this, it's going to go on the YouTube that Joyce will probably send out afterwards. So thank you, everyone. And if anyone has anything else to say, this is your chance now, as long as it's not anything crazy. You can put your hand up and say it.
And thank you for chairing as well. And again, thank all the panelists. That was really, I've written so many things down. Yeah. And I must say, I'm doing a teacher's guide. We're just finishing a teacher's guide for schools that we're going to be doing some research on. And I was very aware that a few weeks ago that we hadn't put male and female reproductive cancers on. So I added 2 slides last week, but my goodness me, I apologize. I didn't put a slide about PMS and PM. I can never remember the whole abbreviation, DD. So I have just started it and I will finish it this afternoon so that teachers will have at least a bit of information. And Annice, I wrote down those websites you recommended so that teachers can, this needs to be discussed in the classroom, because people, all of us, need to know what's normal and what's abnormal. So teachers haven't done this at all in the past. They haven't done any reproductive health. So we have got this great tool now. We will always be editing this PowerPoint. I am sure every week I add something else, but teachers will have this for free and they can use that. So yes, thanks everyone, and thanks the audience, and great questions. Thank you all very much.
Sorry, can I just add one really quick thing? And IVF Babble and our new platform we're launching soon, Babble Health, which is dealing with all aspects of women's health, pregnancy, menopause. If anyone wants to work with us with regards to education of any of these subjects today, we are more than happy to chat, meet, do another webinar, anything like that, where we can get involved to be able to promote positive aspects of women's health.
Thanks, Claire. Our teacher's guide is going on the ESHRA website because it's part of the International Fertility Education Initiative. So we've sent it out now. Anyone that wanted it, I sent it out to many teachers. We've worked with a lot of teachers. It's all evidence-based. It comes from our school survey and the work I've done in schools, and the International Fertility Education have done in schools. So there's lots.
Fantastic.
Yep. Thank you all again very much. And I'll just stop the recording. Thank you.
Thank you.